Good morning, everyone.
Hello, hello.
We're so happy to see you here this morning. You know what? We're really excited because we have a special guest today that's going to be joining us in just a minute. We're going to have Prof Bruce Firestone joining us. And for those of you who've heard and probably know of him, you know he is a wealth of information. So we'll be right with him. Hey, welcome,
Hey,
Bruce.
Hi, guys.
So glad you could join us this morning.
I'm looking forward to it.
Wonderful. You know what? Some of our viewers probably already know about you because you're kind of a well-known guy. However, there's always the odd one in the crowd that really does not really know who you are. So how about if you tell us a little bit about who Bruce Firestone is?
Well, I think I'm going to tell a short story. I've been a lot of different things, Denise, over my career. I've been a university professor. I've been a real estate developer. I've been a hockey guy. It's kind of hard to pin me down. But I'll tell one story that might help our viewers understand a little bit more about me. I was actually on track to being a university professor. I was studying for my PhD at the Australian National University in Canberra in urban economics. And my dad, who was living in Ottawa, Canada at the time, came to visit me in Canberra. And he told me his business in Ottawa wasn't doing very well. It was 1983, so a long time ago now. And he said, Bruce, I only need help for 6 months, So I had a young wife and one child. We now have 5 kids and lots of grandkids. But back then, we were much younger, of course. And so I said, okay, Dad, I'll come back and help you for 6 months. So I came back to Ottawa, came back to Canada in 83, and I found out that my dad had 3 partners, and they had developed 6 humongous warehouses, like 45 or 50,000 square feet each, 20-foot or 24-foot ceiling height, column free. And they had put inside these 6 warehouses a roller disco rink. Now, some of our viewers will not know what roller disco rinks are. I had no idea. I don't even know if we had roller disco or disco music in Australia. But anyway, so here I am. I said, Dad, you own roller disco rinks with 3 partners. I said, no. So I didn't know anything about it. So I went there and said, well, I got to try it out. And so I rented roller skates, and you go on this hardwood floor, beautiful hardwood floor, and you skate around in circles, and there's like a disco ball and lights, and Donna Summer is playing, etc. And then after about 15 minutes, they stopped the music. So I stopped, and then they started up again. You go in the opposite direction. And now after about an hour of this, Denise, I found it incredibly boring. So I took off my skates and I went to see my dad's partners the next day. And I said to the 3 fellows, and they were older than me. I was in my 20s then, and these guys were in their 40s. I said, why don't we do this? I'll trade you our half of the operating business, the roller disco business, for your half of the real estate. And the older fellow said, oh, Bruce, you're a young guy. You're making a mistake. That's a terrible idea. We'd be taking advantage of you. Real estate is kind of boring. It's slow moving, And I said, well, and then they said, oh, by the way, the roller disco business is a cash cow. I didn't know what a cash cow was, but I assumed it was something good. And I said, well, you keep the cow and I'll take the real estate. So we made the trade. Now, 18 months later, roller disco music, I think it just died. You couldn't pay a teenager to go. And unfortunately, they went broke. So I ended up with 6 empty warehouses. I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with them now? But that was just the start of the tech scene in Ottawa. So within a few months, I had them leased to these wonderful tech companies full of really cool young companies doing really neat stuff. And of course, at much higher lease rates than I was getting before from the disco people. And the value went up. So we refinanced. We took out millions of dollars in tax-free money. And I thought, this real estate business actually is kind of interesting.
Wow, that was your beginning in real estate.
That was roller disco. And then I built 1,200 homes, lots of rental properties. I built lots of office buildings and shopping plazas. And after that, I built the Canadian Tire Center, which is a 20,000 seat arena. I'm the founder of the Ottawa Senators. So I got into the real estate thing in a big way. And here, 39 years later, I'm still here after 6 months.
And I
Well,
guess,
we're sure glad you're still around, that's for sure, because you have such a wealth of knowledge that you've been able to, partake with everyone.
and I know that you have decided that rather than holding that knowledge in a vault and hiding it from everyone, you're willing to share. And I think that's another thing that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, I think the older I get, the less sort of doing I do and the more coaching, mentoring, and teaching I do. And, my dad, Stuart, before he passed away, said to me, in his opinion, people should never retire. Look at the three of us. Of course, you're much younger than me, but he meant, what are you going to do if you just sit around and watch TV all day? Would be terrible. I don't think it'd be very good for us at all. And I hate golf because I'm so bad at it. So when I was getting ready to retire from the University of Ottawa, at age 60, I actually hired a life coach and spent about 6 months with her because I wanted to do something different with Act 3 of my life. Maybe not teaching at a university, maybe not being a developer per se. And after a few months, she said, Bruce, you've got lots of education, you've got lots of experience, and you should be a coach. And I said, oh, no. I don't want to be a life coach. So if you're having marital problems, don't come to me. I wouldn't be any good at that. But she said, no, I meant maybe a real estate investment and business coach. Oh, I said, that's an interesting idea. And, when I hear a good idea, an entrepreneur like me, I think 24 hours later, I had like a very primitive hand-built website saying, hey, I'm available. And so in the last 9 years, I've been able to put about 2,500 people through the coaching and teaching that I do. And I learn almost as much from the people I coach as they do from me.
And I know we've had the chance to get together and have some chats, and you've presented at some of our groups and stuff like that. And I know that people appreciate it so much because, like I said, you are such a wealth of knowledge. So, but, one of the taglines that you use that I absolutely love, and I'd probably like to find out a little bit more where it came from, is where you talk about making the impossible possible. Now, what the heck does that mean to a real estate investor, making the impossible possible?
Well, I mean, it comes from my Senators days, which now goes back to the 90s. And when we went after a National Hockey League expansion franchise, we bought 600 acres of land. And the idea was to put an NHL expansion franchise in that land assembly, build a beautiful new arena in that land assembly, and drive the value of the property up. And it worked pretty well. We paid an average of $12,000 an acre for 600 acres. So we spent about $7.2 million on that piece of property. And today it trades for between $800,000 and $900,000 an acre. So that property's worth, a lot more than it was 20 or 30 years ago. So the principle was, can we bring a National Hockey League expansion franchise to a city like Ottawa at a time, this was the 90s, when the Canadian dollar was falling out of bed, went from 90 cents to I think 62 or 63 cents, and we were losing NHL teams. I think the Nordiques went to Colorado and the Winnipeg Jets, I don't remember where they went, but they're back now. But back then, we were in a recession, we were losing NHL franchises, and everybody said, it's impossible. And I said, no, I can make the impossible possible.
Wow. But you've taken that tagline and you've actually introduced it throughout just about everything that you do.
So just to be fair to the people I coach, they're doing it now too. So I'll give you an example. One of my clients is in a small town, and there's a new term that I don't know if you've heard it, you guys, but I didn't know it until a couple of my California clients told me the term about 2 weeks ago. And they call small towns within an hour or two of a larger center, they call them Zoom towns.
Okay.
Zoom towns. I said, well, what is it? California, they always have cool descriptors. What is a Zoom town? And they said, it's a small town within an hour or two of San Francisco, Austin, Toronto, you name it, that is booming because of Zoom. Oh, I get it now. So what it meant was that people could, get San Francisco's salaries and live in Boise, Idaho. Right? Or just put whatever cities and towns you want in there. So what we're doing now is, so I've got people in the United States and in Canada doing something I call Main Street makeovers. What the hell is that? what it is the idea is to go into small towns, again, within an hour or two of these larger centers, and buy up some of those old buildings in the almost abandoned or hollowed out downtowns. And we've been doing that. You can buy these buildings for not very much money. And then what you have is you have an opportunity to update them, you know, to bring them up to building code standards of 2021, 2022, whatever, and populate them with people who want to live and work in the same building. Right? We're in the same place. And that is a really, really hot model. And so you can buy them, like I said, for almost no money. You do have some renovations. And then just like those roller disco warehouses, hopefully they go up in value, you can refinance, pull some money out and do it again.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And like I said, it's amazing what people with a little bit of creativity can actually do with real estate.
Oh, it's incredible.
And you're one of the most creative guys I think I probably know when it comes time for real estate.
I like this. I think I'll come back next time.
Yeah, you deserve that pat in the back because you really are very creative.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no. You know what? It's just that even today, in today's market, I mean, there's a lot of problems out there. I mean, you hear, I can't find any properties, you know, and stuff like that. What are some of those problems right now that you're hearing? Because you're also a realtor, you're a broker.
Yeah, I'm a real estate
and
broker.
You're dealing with clients all the time. What are you hearing out there, some of those problems that investors are having?
Well, I think that is the number one problem, is finding properties that make sense. You know, you make money in the real estate business when you buy. So you have to buy smart. And I put a minimum cap rate on properties that either I buy for my family or my clients buy of 6%. Now, in places like LA, some of my clients were buying properties which had cap rates of 1.7 or 1.9%. You could get 1.7% from your bank. So I said to the young fellows, two lads, they're in their 30s, but they seem like kids to me, but they're really smart. I said, that's terrible. Stop doing that. You know, 1.7% or even 1.9% takes a long time to double your money. I said, you got to buy at 6% or more. And they said, oh, this is LA, can't do it. And I said, I bet you can. And so they said, I don't think so. But anyway, they hired me as their coach anyway. So what we found about a month and a half later was two homes in Long Beach, which are about 5 or 6 blocks from the port. And Long Beach has a huge port. I mean, it's one of the most important ports in North America. And what was neat about it is they had frontage on a road, and then there was another road on the side here, and then there was an alley in the back. So it had sort of frontage on 3 sides of the property, not 4, but 3. And so what they did was they bought these properties and they duplexed the existing homes on the property. So they were actually side by side rather than up and down, but they had 2 units. So that was a first step at something I call animation. Animation is just a word I use for adding new revenues. But then we got permission from Long Beach, from the city, to add 2 good-sized workshops in the backyard for that live-work condition I mentioned a few minutes ago. Now, so you can rent to a tenant who then has his or her workspace in the back, and they're 5 or 6 blocks from one of the most important ports in North America. And so there's 2 mechanics who are headquartered there, and they're on call 24/7, 365 to repair stuff that needs repairing. Because right now, one of the big problems we're having is a worldwide supply chain crisis, and Long Beach is in that crisis. It's right up to their eyeballs in problems. And so having these workshops a few blocks from the port made them extremely valuable. The cap rates on those 2 properties are in the 7% range.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what I want people to do. I want them to really work on finding properties that no one else buys or no one else wants. Maybe the cap rates are too low, but then you can animate them and then bring them up to something that's a responsible number. I'll give you one more simple example, Denise and Stuart, and that is one of my clients, again, in a small Zoom town, wanted to buy a duplex. Now, in that particular town, there are probably about 300,000 or 400,000 people leaving, in this case, Toronto. They're just getting out of Toronto. They want to go somewhere that isn't Toronto. And so when you see a duplex available in this smaller town, you might have 7 or 8, sometimes 10 or 12 offers on it, and it goes over asking, sometimes $100,000 over asking. That's not what I wanted young Nick to do. And he said, well, how do I buy something? How do I find something that's responsible? I said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to find a duplex with the worst leases ever. You're going to find something that has almost no, in fact, it doesn't have cash flow. It doesn't have a 6% cap rate. It probably has a 2.5% cap rate. Nobody's going to want that. Because in Ontario, you have something called the Residential Tenancy Act. And so in many states, in many provinces, you have rent control. You can't get rid of tenants. You know, they're there for a long time. So he said, well, why would I do that? I'll buy something and I'll lose money every month. Ah, no, you'll animate it, Nick. So he did find a property. It was, they were asking $500,000 for it, a duplex. And he bought it for $375,000 in a super hot market. Everybody else was paying over asking. He paid $125,000 because the leases were absolutely terrible. However, in the backyard, there's not one but two detached garages. One he's turning into a storage unit, and one he's going to turn into a workshop for that live-work condition. And the backyard is so deep and so big, he can build a coach house, which is like a tiny house in the backyard. And so his cap rate when he finishes will probably be about 7.5 or 8%. But when he bought it, it certainly wasn't that. But you're finding properties that no one else wants. You're buying what no one else is looking at, but you have a plan going in.
Like, I know that you have tons and tons of tips of how people can actually look for those types of properties, how they're going to buy at a much lower, like I said, cap rate or even price, be able to animate it, as you say, again, right, still in the hot market. Now, I know you've shared sort of one of those tips, and I know you have many, and I know that our viewers are going to want to know also that they're going to have an opportunity to get one of your, let's say, papers that has tons of tips of exactly what you're just talking about, is just buying low in a hot market. Now, yes, you know, I know people are just eager, and I know you have so many stories. I'd love for you to maybe share just another one again of those tips that you'd have about how people can actually buy low even in this hot market.
Sure. I mean, I put that together because, I mean, you asked me what are the problems, and the two main problems, I think, are that people are overpaying. Investors, I'm talking about, are overpaying, and that's a disaster. Okay, you know, I'd rather not coach people than coach them to failure. That's a bad plan. That's one. And then the second problem is getting decent appraisals. All right, appraisers are the gatekeepers, right? And most of the people I coach, you know, they're either former students of mine buying their first investment property, and I have a couple of billionaire clients, but they're all in the same boat, finding good properties and making sure that they animate them properly and they get good appraisals. The last two are related. If you take a property like you mentioned that Nick bought, and you animate the heck out of it, and you raise your income, I don't have to tell you guys that raises, you know, the appraised value, because commercial appraisals, whether it's a duplex, a triplex, a mixed-use building, industrial building, whatever, are based on net operating income and the fair market value cap rate. So the higher you can drive the income, in most cases, the higher you're going to drive your appraisal. So those are the two big problems: finding the properties and then animating the property, I guess three, and then getting decent appraisals.
So let's talk for a second about the document that you shared with Denise and I, 31 tips.
Yep.
What is that report?
Well, there are 31 tips on how to find property, and to some extent, I've given everybody sort of a peek at it, right? So one of the key variables I look at is days on market. It's called DOM. And you can look it up if it's on almost all of these real estate websites. You can see how long the listing has been up for. And I look for properties that nobody else wants. And, you know, have I ever told you the story of how I bought a townhouse from a hoarder?
No.
I don't think
so. I'll tell you that. So looking at DOM, days on market, I noticed the townhouse in a very good location had been on the market, I think, 300 days. In a hot market, a 300-day listing. I mean, what the heck is that? So I said to him, well, I'm going to go have a look at that. And as soon as the door opened to this townhouse, I understood why it hadn't sold. I had never seen a house owned by a hoarder. And, you know, there were things, stuff piled 6 and 8 feet high. You had to sort of turn sideways to go through the property. I think she had 4 or 5 cats, so you can imagine the smell. nobody would even go in. Certainly if my wife had been with me, she would have said, I'll sit in the car. But I went in and I met the owner and her realtor and walked through it. And I thought to myself, you know, if we could get all of this stuff out of here, this might be quite interesting. And most of the townhouses in that area were selling for $400,000 or $500,000. And I offered the lady, the owner, and her realtor $240,000. And the realtor said, well, that's an insult. And I said, well, it's been for sale for 300 days or whatever. And, you know, but and then I turned to the lady, the owner, and she was quite elderly, I think close to 80. And I said, Joan, you should sell it to me, because here's what I'll do. You give me the keys and walk out and get on with the rest of your life. You don't have to throw out any of your precious stuff, because apparently it's very hard for a hoarder to throw anything out, even used tissues. You know, so I said, just give me the keys and walk out. And the realtor says, Mr. Firestone, you have to do better. $240,000 is an insult. So I said, yeah, I can increase the offer. So I increased it $1,250. So, and Joan agreed, said, overruled her realtor. Really, I was, you know, presenting the offer. I can do that. You have the right to. And so I bought it for $241,000, $250,000, and I have two strong sons and a couple of young fellows who work for me. So between the four of them and me mostly supervising, in the next 3.5 weeks, we cleaned out all the stuff. It took out 3 or 4 big container loads of garbage, really. And then the townhouse filled up with light and air, and I had it reappraised, I think, about a month later, 2 months later, for, I think it was $430,000. So, you know, you have to be prepared, Stuart, to go into properties that may have been overlooked by the market and see past all the, in this case, literally all the crap that was in there, and understand what you can do with it. And that's one of the ways I look to find property.
I know that we've been sort of the recipient of one of those properties too, that had what we call the cat house, because there had been 48 cats living in it. And plus it was a hoarder house. Yeah. So yeah, and we got that fairly cheap, and we more than doubled the price and value, you know, once we got it all done and refinished. So there's definitely, you know, something to look at.
You did better than I did. We didn't quite double. It went up by about 70 or 80%, but we didn't double it.
Yeah, no, this, yeah, and you're right. These are the type of homes that people are scared of. Like they don't even want to walk in.
No, oh no, well, in a super hot market, and it had been for sale for a long time. So DOM, days on market, is very important. And there's 31 more tips in that handbook that will help people figure it out.
So how can people get access to that handbook?
Well, I have a website called burningrocksolutions.com. burningrocksolutions.com. Think about my last name, Firestone, Burning Rock. So it's pretty easy to remember, I think. burningrocksolutions.com, and we uploaded it there. So /buy-low, all lowercase. You can see it. I think it's scrolling on the bottom here. Yep. So you go to burningrocksolutions.com /buy-low, lowercase, and you can get a copy.
And that's actually, I kind of have my copy right here, and it's actually 31 tips on how to buy low, even in a hot market.
There you go.
Bruce has really expanded on that. So that's going to be great, guys. So make sure you copy that down, and Stuart will be able to run it again in a few moments. But yeah, make sure you get that copy, because you're going to get loads of information. Like I said, 31 tips and more actually that he actually has in this document. And I know that that's absolutely awesome, because like I said, you're a wealth of information. You have so many stories after stories after stories that you can tell, you know, about some of the, you know, experiences that people you've either coached or people you've known, or, you know, just, yeah, of what people are dealing with out there all the time.
So I think that one of the things I should add, you know, to help folks is that I am an expert in business models. You know, I taught at the Telfer School of Management and the Sprott School of Business, and I really worked hard on business models, you know, tech business models, service industry business models, etc. But when I got into this real estate investment and business coaching thing, I thought I should bring the business model discipline to real estate. And everybody really thinks that there's only kind of one or two business models in real estate. You know, you buy a townhouse or a single family home and you rent it out and you hope for the best. Or you buy, you know, a multi-res apartment building with a bunch of investor partners and again, hope for the best. But we probably worked through about 50 or 60 different real estate business models that are really good. And the people who make the most money in this business and in probably any business are people who have an actual business model and then they rinse and repeat it, right? So that, you know, you get really, really, really good at something. Now, it's a little bit boring to always repeat yourself, but if you want to make real money, you find a business model that you have some skills that apply, that you like, that you're passionate about, and then you do it. And if it's successful, which I'm sure it will be, you just do it over and over again. And if you want a little variety in your life, get a hobby. But don't make your business a hobby. Make your business a successful business. And business models they really matter. I'm just going to give you one more that I really adore. A lot of my clients in the United States and Canada, and some overseas as well, are buying rural properties, again, within an hour or two of larger centers. Nobody wants these rural properties. But let me give you an example of one that a client of mine just purchased. It has a 5-bedroom house on it. It has a huge, like 3,000 or 4,000 square foot workshop already built. It has an old barn that's probably another 4,000 or 5,000 square feet. It's humongous, and it has 15 acres of tillable land. The client bought it for $435,000. And it's within about an hour of a larger center. And nobody else wanted it, you know. And again, it looked like heck. Okay, I mean, the weeds were growing up. There was garbage anywhere. It was vacant. I think it had been vacant for at least a year. You know, there were mice everywhere. I mean, it was typical rural property that had been neglected. But they bought it with a plan, an animation plan. And here's what they're going to do with it. The 5-bedroom house will be duplex. There'll be 2 apartments. The workshop is perfect for the live-work condition. You know, somebody who's, say, in the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning business can live in one of those apartments and have his or her workshop, you know, 50 or 60 feet away. And then the barn can be divided. I've got one of these myself, and you've helped me with it, you two. A barn can be divided up into micro workshops. Last year, about 35 or 36 million Americans were unemployed, and about 8.2 or 8.3 million Canadians. That's about 43 million people out of work. Now, some of them are going back to a job, a job, but many of them are starting their own side hustles, their own gigs. So, you know, I converted with your help one of my barns into these mini workshops. I've got a cigar box guitar maker in there. A lady makes handmade soaps. Another lady who makes furniture out of wood pallets. I've got a master timber framer in there, a welder there, a dog training school, you know, just endless. Oh, somebody who makes e-catamarans, electric boats. I mean, it's just endless. And so they're going to animate this. They bought it for $435,000, which is not a lot, 15 acres. And they've got all these opportunities. I don't know what the cap rate is going to be when they finish, but it'll probably be about 13%.
That's amazing. And I know the project that you have done with, I guess there's reverberation there. There we go. So I know that the barn that you have with all of these workshops, that was a big pivot that you did also.
Yeah.
And I mean, it turned fabulous. And like you said, you've got it filled. You've got storage containers, I believe also. You've got all these workshops in there, and it's turned into quite a business venture.
It's been fantastic. And the other thing that we've asked the city to approve is to approve some bunkies next to it, because the number of people who say, listen, I make a wood pallet furniture. Do you have a place close by that I can live? And we have a seamstress in there, a fashion designer, and she's in one of the bunkies, and she works in the barn dominium. And it's that live work thing. I mean, who really wants to get up, you know, in LA in the morning and drive an hour or 2 hours to work, to go into a 30-story office building and then reverse the process? I mean, that's a terrible way to organize our cities and to organize our lives. So I really like that live work condition. And, you know, think about your friends and my friends, who are older and younger, the people in the barn dominium, and I've got lots of clients elsewhere doing it, range in age from their 20s to their 70s. My cigar box guitar maker has got to be well into his 70s, and he's a wonderful, wonderful guy. He tells great stories, and he's a good tenant too.
So when you talk about a bunkie, I guess probably the closest thing you can call it is just like a tiny house, isn't it?
Well, in this particular city, the words tiny house is considered blasphemy. It would be like I just issued a few swear words. All right. So you don't call it tiny houses, because one of the problems with tiny houses is many jurisdictions do not permit them. And the reason for that, Denise, is they say, well, it'll depress real estate values. But that's not the real reason, I don't think. The real reason is that tiny houses on wheels are plated as homemade RVs in most jurisdictions, which means they can't be assessed for property taxes. So it's almost always about money. So if you use the word tiny house, the city will say, absolutely, no way we'll permit this. If you call it a bunkie and it has a permanent foundation, we put that particular bunkie on piles, you might get it approved.
Wow. Yeah. No, this has been totally amazing, Bruce. And I want people to know, again, I'm going to let Stuart run the tape again. It's just that for those of you who would like to get Bruce's free report, which is 31 tips on how to buy low, even in a hot market, make sure you go to, and it's coming up, it's going to be burningrocksolutions.com/buy low. And that will give you his latest paper of these 31 tips on how to buy low in a hot market. And again, I think every real estate investor out there today, and even if those may not be real estate investors, it could just be looking maybe for their new home and not knowing quite how to go about it because they feel the prices are quite high. But there's tips in there for everybody. So take advantage of that while Bruce has got it up to be able to get that free report for you. So Bruce, I thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're like, I love the stories. I mean, they're not stories, they're live stories, but they're still stories nonetheless, but they're live stories of people actually making things happen.
Yeah. And, I believe that even your principal residence should be an asset. Mr. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki says your principal residence is really a liability, because if you lose your job or you retire or your health goes south, it sucks money out of your jeans. But, our principal residence, we have a micro suite in the basement. We have a coach house in the backyard. So even our principal residence is an asset, according to Robert Kiyosaki's terminology, because it produces income. And of course, we live here too. And so you can actually live for free. And you might think, well, that doesn't really matter, except when you look at Social Security payments in the United States and the Canada Pension Plan in Canada, the CPP is, the average is about $620 a month. It is hard to live on $620 a month. Social Security in the United States is a little bit better. I think it's $1,200 or $1,300 a month, but still not a whole lot. So having, a coach house in your backyard that produces an extra $30,000 or $40,000 a year in income, and having a micro suite like we do in the basement that produces another $10,000 or $12,000 in income, that's a significant difference for a lot of people. So, the reason I think that people come to people like you, Denise and Stuart, and to me is because they're fed up with the financial planning industry, which I think is failing people. My mutual funds and RSPs and the 401ks that I know in the United States, some of them are doing okay, but many of them are terrible. And whereas real estate is get rich slow.
That it definitely is. And if anyone even thinks this is a get rich quick scheme, they're in the wrong business, totally wrong business.
If you can make, 6% on your money instead of 2% on your money, or you can make like that property I mentioned, you can make 13% on your money. I mean, if you project that out over 20 years, that will help you a lot more than like my mutual funds. If I buy one, it's definitely going to suck.
We have the same luck.
All right. Yeah. All the mutual fund salesmen over my life have said, oh yeah, 6, 8, 10, 12%. And then 5 years later, oh, well, it's only 2%. And then they go, well, wait for the next 5 years. But unfortunately, life isn't like that, because you only have a certain number of 5 years, right? And then they go.
And the one thing we have found out is when they say you go, 6, 8, 10, whatever it is on the fund maybe does that. not the investor in that
Not
fund.
you.
Will never
At least
do
at
that.
least not so, when I hung up my shingle as a real estate investment coach, again, I wasn't sure if anybody would want any, but it turned out that they did.
Oh, I mean, the knowledge you have is way too valuable for you to hang up your shingles there, Bruce. You still have so much to share.
Well, I'm going to continue to do this as long as, there's my health holds up, and as long as people want me to, because I really enjoy it. And like I said, when we started, my dad said, don't retire just to sit at home and watch TV. Keep using your brain as best you can, your body, and give back to society. So I'm trying.
Somebody once said to me, and I live by this thing, it's much better to burn out than to rust out.
Oh, yeah. Didn't Neil Young have a song like that?
He might have. There
you go.
But as you know, like even for us, right? I mean, people have said too, we're Zoomers, which is just boomers with a lot of zip. And
Well,
the thing
maybe
is,
Zoomers are going to Zoom towns.
well,
That's
there you
it.
go. There you go. So yeah, that's great. Again, Bruce, thank you for people who want to pick up your latest paper on 31 tips on how to buy low in a hot market. Make sure you go to, and Stuart will run that again. It's going to be at Burning Rock Solution. There we go. Burning Rock Solutions /buy low. Thank you again, Bruce, for joining us today. And we thank you so much. And well, we wish you a great rest of the day.
And we will get this pandemic behind us. And during this time of change, it's obviously a humanitarian disaster, but there is tremendous opportunity. Never more than at this time, in my opinion.
That's great. Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
Bye.